Hello everyone, today let's solve the problem number 435, non-overlapping intervals, right? So what the question states here, we are given an array of intervals. You can clearly see here, we are given an array of intervals where each interval is represented by start of I and end of I. You can clearly see this is nothing but the start and this is nothing but the end they have given. Each interval, start, end, start, this one is start, this one is end. Same goes with the last one, start, end, right? So our task is to determine the minimum number of intervals we need to remove so that remaining intervals do not overlap. So we have to find or determine the minimum number of intervals that is needed to remove, mainly to remove, so that the remaining intervals do not overlap. So remaining intervals should not overlap after removing the minimum number of intervals, right? So here you can clearly see, let's come to this example. So here 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3, 3 comma 4 and 1 comma 3 we have. So 1 comma 3 can be removed here. So here this one, if we remove 1 comma 3 here, you can clearly see the rest of the intervals are non-overlapping. 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3 and 3 comma 4 is not overlapping, non-overlapping, right? So because here 1 1 we have the same numbers here, 1 1 2 and 3. So this one is this one overlapping, right? If we remove 1 comma 3, in this case 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3 and 3 comma 4 is non-overlapping. So we have to return 1, right? So same goes with example 2 here. Similar one, 1 comma 2, 1 comma 2, 1 comma 2 we have. So if we remove the numbers are same here, you can clearly see here. Suppose if we consider this one x1, this one as x2 and x3, y1, y2 and y3. So x1 is equal to x2 equals to x3 and y1 equals y2 equals y3 in this case. So we have to remove two intervals here. So we need to remove 2 1 comma 2 to make the rest of the intervals non-overlapping. Here you can clearly see. So output we need to return in this case is 2. Same goes with example 3 here. So 1 comma 2 and 2 comma 3 we have. So starting we do not have any intervals that is overlapping currently, right? So we don't have to remove any of those intervals since they are already non-overlapping in this case, right? So you can clearly see here, in this case we will return 0, right? So this is for the example 1, example 2 and example 3 they have mentioned. I hope the question is completely clear and what we need to do is also completely clear, right? As usual, first we will discuss about the approach, followed by the edge cases one by one, and then finally discuss the this one, what do we call, finally we will discuss, finally we'll write the code and discuss the complexities for the code that we have written. Initially, as usual, let's discuss the approach. So let's discuss the approach step by step. First thing we have to keep in mind here is we will be going with the greedy approach along with the sorting. Sorting, when I say sorting, sort by end time here. You can clearly see sort by end time. Nothing but we will be going with the greedy approach, right? So here intervals is 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3, 3 comma 4 and 1 comma 3. So output here is 1. The same example, first example that they have given in the question, I have considered the same. So the output that we need to get here is 1. We have already discussed this one, right? So let's discuss the thought process, and finally what we'll do, let's also discuss how can we articulate that one in the form of code. That we will see at the last. Now let's discuss the thought process here. Let's go with the thought process. So here step 1, so we are considering the same this one example, the first example, right? Here the intervals are 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3, 3 comma 4 and 1 comma 3. Here we will be sorting the intervals by end time. We have already discussed this one. We will be going with the greedy approach, nothing but we will be sorting by end time, right? So we have already discussed this one, sort by end time. In this case, after sorting, it will be 1 comma 2, 1 comma 3, 2 comma 3 and 3 comma 4. So I hope this is clear. So this one will come second, right? We are going with sorting, nothing but sorting in ascending order. So 1 comma 2, 1 comma 3, 2 comma 3 and 3 comma 4 after we have sorted the intervals, right? So let's move on with the step 2 here, right? We will be iterating through the intervals and we will count the overlaps, number of overlaps we will count. So what we'll do, we will iterate through the sorted intervals while keeping track of the previous intervals end time, nothing but previous end. this one I'm speaking of, right? So let's initialize previous end to initially infinity. So I will give here, I will be initializing the previous end to negative infinity here. Let's initialize the previous end to negative infinity. Nothing but to track last non-overlapping intervals end time, right? So we will count the overlapping intervals. Nothing but count equals 0 initially. So count overlapping intervals, initially count equals 0. So here you can clearly see this one we have considered negative infinity. So this is overlapping 1 comma 2 we have considered. Is this overlapping? No, right? 1 comma 2, this one we have considered, the first one. So let me choose here red one. Just give me a second here. So this one we are considering 1 comma 2. This is fine. So is this overlapping? No, right? This is not overlapping in this case. Action we have to keep. If this is not overlapping, then we have to keep, right? Previous end, this is 2. Previous end is 2, right? So previous end is 2. So here in this case, this is fine. Next, let's consider 2 comma 3 here, this one, right? So let's go with 2 comma 3. Here previous end is 2. We have 2 here. So previous end is 2. Overlapping, yes, this is overlapping. So this you can clearly see this one after sorting 1 comma 1. Sorry, this one we are considering 1 comma 3 after sorting, right? This one, this is not the one. Not 2 comma 3. We are considering 1 comma 3. Sorry, this one. Yeah, this one is overlapping 1 and 1. Yes, 1 and 1 to 1 3. This is overlapping. Yes, with action we will keep. No, we will remove. Instead of keeping, we will remove. So the previous end will be 2 here. In this case, 2 as well. So previous end was 2. So this will be 2 itself, right? So we will remove this one. So next, let's consider 2 comma 3 here. 2 comma 3. The previous end is 2. Here you can clearly see this one 2. We'll consider 2. Overlapping? No, this is not overlapping. You can clearly see here. So we don't have another 2, right? So this is not overlapping at all. So this one, what we will do, we will keep in this case. So previous end in this case is 3. So 3 we have here. You can clearly see here 1 comma 3, 2 comma 3. We have 3 here. This is fine. So this was overlapping. So we were removing. That is the reason we will not. We have not considered 3 here for this one. Wait, here for the previous end, right? So don't get confused here. So now the previous end is 3. This is overlapping. No, in this case, action what we will do, we will keep in this case. Previous end will be 4. Previous end will be quite obviously 4 here. You can clearly see 4 here, right? So this one previous end we are not considering 3 because this is overlapping and we are removing this one entirely, right? We are removing this one. So you can clearly see here 1 we are removing this one 1 comma 3 which was having previous end 2 and overlapping, yes, and we are removing this one and previous end is 2 for this one, right? This one only 1, right? So we have to remove only 1 comma 3 in this case. So total removals in this case is 1 in this case, and 1 comma 3 is removed to make the intervals non-overlapping. You can clearly see here. Total removals is 1. 1 comma 3 is removed to make the intervals non-overlapping. I hope this is completely clear. This is the approach that we will be going with. Greedy approach, right? So along with the sorting. Greedy approach along with the sorting. Why greedy? Because we are sorting in the ascending order, right? So yeah, we'll be going with the greedy along with the sorting. So edge cases here, the first one, all intervals overlap completely. You can clearly see here all the intervals overlap completely. So here example we have considered 1 comma 2, 1 comma 2, 1 comma 2. This is fine. We have to remove 2 intervals in this case. We have already discussed this one in the example. We have to remove 1 comma 2, either any of the 2, right, to get the solution. So in this case output will be 2, right? So we will be we have to remove 2 intervals in this case. So next edge case here is no overlaps, already non-overlapping intervals. In this case example 1 comma 2, 2 comma 3 and 3 comma 4. So no removals is needed at all here. So all are different here, 1 2 3. So first initial number, right? So all the beginning intervals all are different here. In this case we don't need to no overlaps at all here, means already non-overlapping intervals we have. So the output will be, we need to return output 0 in this case, only one interval. The next edge case here is only one interval. So here we have 5 comma 10, no removals needed at all, we have only one intervals, right? So this will be 0 as well. So the final edge case here is intervals touch at 1 point. So here 1 comma 2 and 2 comma 3 we have. So this is different from this one, only two intervals we have, so no removals needed here as well. So the output will be 0 in this case as well. These are the 4 edge cases that we need to consider here. The first edge case that we went with here is all intervals overlap completely. The second edge case we went with here is no overlaps. The third edge case that we went with here is only one interval, and the fourth edge case that we went with here is intervals touch at 1 point, right? So these are the 4 edge cases that we need to consider, right? So I hope the approach and this one edge cases, all the edge cases that we discussed is completely clear. What we'll do now, let's start writing the code. So let's start writing the code here. The first step, we have to sort the intervals based on the ending time, nothing but greedy choice. We have already discussed this one. So how can we articulate that one in the form of code? Let's consider intervals here, intervals dot sort. So in the ascending order, right? So I'll just give here a comma b, a minus b. I hope this is clear. So this one based on the first one, beginning, this one, right? Number. So beginning interval or the starting interval. So this one has to be a of 1 minus b of 1. So this is fine. So the next step here is we will assign, we are considering previous end and count, if you remember the table, right? So let's go with the previous end and initialize the previous end to negative infinity. So that's what we did, if you remember, right? And count, let's initialize the count to 0 initially. So this will be prev and this will equals minus infinity. This is fine. And count, this one equals 0. This is fine, right? So here, what is the second step here? Let's iterate through the intervals. So for loop for the iteration. So let s comma e of intervals. So I'll just give here intervals. This one, inside this one, let's go with a simple if condition. If s less than previous end, then what we will do within this one, we will go with the if overlapping interval found, then we have to increment the removal count. So overlapping interval found, then we have to quite obviously remove the increment the removal count. We have to remove that one, right? So in that case, we have considered count here. Count equals, we have initialized this one to 0. Removal count, let's increment if overlapping is found. Else, if overlapping is not found, we have to update the previous end to the end of the current interval. This we saw in the box, if you remember that one, the final step, the box, we discussed this one, right? We will assign previous end to end. Nothing but we are updating previous end to the end of the current interval, right? So I hope this is clear. The final step here is we have to return the count. Nothing but we have to return the count of removed intervals. In this case, we have to return the count of removed intervals. Return count. I hope this is clear. So here, let me format the code once and let me hit the run button. So here you can clearly see all the test cases are getting passed here, right? So all the test cases are getting passed here. So let me quickly hit the submit button now. So I hope, yeah, you can clearly see here all the test cases are getting passed here, right? So the code works absolutely correct in this case. Let's quickly discuss the complexities for the code that we have written. So here the approach that we went with here is greedy with sorting. We know this one, right? We went with a greedy approach. So what would be the time complexity here? The overall time complexity would be big O of n log n, right? So overall time complexity would be big O of n log n. And what would be the space complexity here? Overall space complexity would be big O of 1 here. So overall space complexity would be big O of 1 here. Why? Because we are making use of only few extra variables are used here. You can clearly see here. So that requires constant space. So no extra space is being used here. So overall space complexity would be, in this case, it would be big O of 1. So overall time complexity would be big O of n log n, and overall space complexity would be big of 1 in this case, right? So I hope the code or the solution that we have written is completely clear. For now, this is it. Thanks for watching, guys.